Hello, everyone. We are back, the American crew. I've swapped Alki with Adoni today. It's good to have you back, Adoni. What's up?
Yeah, man, what's up? I'm really happy to be back on. Like we said before, this is my first podcast back since last season, so we got a lot to talk about for sure.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. Unfortunately, obviously, we lost Alki this week, but give and take, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, nice to see you, and I'm excited to talk to you about what we got today because yeah, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, there's two games on the docket. We had the Lens game first leg last Thursday, and then we had Levedaikos on the weekend. We'll start with the first one. We'll start with Lens. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't really know what to say, how to sum it up in one word, but it was frustrating, I guess is the right word. We obviously went down 2-0. They opened the score and it was like the third or fourth minute. Um, from the left side, they cross it over to the right side, and there's a man completely unmarked on the right side, and it's actually I think the right back who just has an easy job. All he has to do is kind of find the target, and it's probably going in, which is exactly what he does. That was 1-0. Then before the 2-0 happened, they actually got a man sent off. I think that was like in the 21st minute. Their center back Medina, who is one of their most expensive players and one of their most vital pieces in defense, got it was a straight red. Actually, he had already been booked with a yellow earlier in the match, but the play in question got reviewed by VAR, and VAR can only give straight reds. Only straight reds are reviewable by VAR. So it wasn't a review for a second yellow. It was only a review for a straight red, which is exactly what happened. VAR reviewed it, and in fact did give the straight red for basically studs up, stepping on the player who was Baca. Um, and we thought the tides were going to shift there. But unfortunately, they didn't because only a couple minutes after that, they doubled their lead 2-0 around the 25th minute. Um, it was, again, starting on the left side, cross in to the middle of the box where their striker, Saeed, uh, kind of got a second chance opportunity. He hit it first time. Drago made a good save, and then he got the rebound. Um, After that, we kind of came into the game a little more. But it wasn't until the 51st minute where Foti just had an absolute moment of brilliance. Um, that's a goal we really don't see often, if ever, from Greek teams. But he beat 4 to 5 players alone, single handedly, dribbling through their defense, and the finish too was very well taken with his left foot. Um, Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. It did end 2-1. We did have a penalty shout in the 86th minute, I think it was, where Polistri takes a shot from outside the box, and it does hit the player's hand, the defender's hand inside the box. Originally on the field, it was given as a penalty. Then the ref went to VAR and overturned it. Um, there was some controversy with that. Ultimately, most of the fans did kind of see it as the correct call to be overturned. Um, and that's pretty much it. We did have a couple of chances in not extra time, stoppage time, but ultimately it was 2-1. We didn't take full advantage of that extra man for 70 minutes. And now we go back to Athens needing a win by at least one goal. So yeah, it was an eventful game. But yeah, let me get your quick thoughts, Donny.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into the game, I wasn't super confident, but I also wasn't really like very concerned about it. Truth be told, I'm not very familiar with Lens and how they play because I don't really watch the French league. But I do know that, typically with the French sides, we're either hit or miss, like with Rennes last year. So I was more on the positive side. Then we started the game off, and I saw that we were down in the fourth minute, already down 1-0. Like you said, tides were supposed to turn in like the 25th minute or so when they got their red card. Um, and then before I knew it, we're down 2-0. And I'm kind of like, oh, what's going on over here? Um, of course, we pulled it back. We pulled one back with Foti with that amazing goal. I mean, it's only a matter of time again before he's probably sold either this season or next. But That was good to see. That was probably the biggest takeaway for me, biggest positive takeaway was that little tidbit there. It just kind of shows that we honestly could have gone down by more. I mean, 2-1, I think, is a little bit flattering for us. And if, as a Panathinaikos fan, of course, you wanted that penalty. At least I wanted that penalty to, to stand, but, it didn't. Going into this second leg, 2-2 would have been a lot better, a lot more comfortable, of course. But we're down 2-1. Again, it could have been easily 4-1. It could have been however many 3-1, whatever. Um, we have a little bit of a hill to climb, but it's not a full mountain going into this second game. But the first one, there were some alarm bells definitely for sure. That kind of make me a little bit nervous, but those were kind of my takeaways.
Yeah. I did watch Lens' game before ours. So they played last week against Angers in the French league. It was their opener. Angers is a newly promoted team. They're kind of one of those teams that flip flops between the top division and second, but this year they are a newly promoted team and they beat them 1-0 away. Um, they were not super impressive. I think this team is very beatable. It didn't really seem like it on Thursday because we had our own problems, which we're going to get into. But this team is very beatable. They didn't blow away a newly promoted side in France. They had spells that they were really good in. I'm not taking anything away from them, but over 90 minutes they weren't suffocating them. Um, there's a couple of standout players in that game. Saeed was on the score sheet, who also scored against us the second goal. He's not their best player by any means. Especially he's one of their less valuable players. I think he's around 3 to 4 million on transfer market, but he does have quality above his market value, which we saw ourselves. He does find himself in the right spot a lot, and he can put away a half chance, which is exactly what he did. He did get a little lucky with the rebound from Drago falling right back into his feet, but he was in the original spot to put it on target. So he is a quality player. Other ones that stand out are Danzo. He's just a class defender. I think that became very quickly obvious in our game too. On last Sunday, when I was watching their game, he was cleaning up all the messes of his fellow defenders, his midfielders. Like he's this sweeper stopper guy. Like he's doing everything on the pitch. You could just tell he has quality, which is also why he's linked away from Lens, and I think he's linked to Italy, right? And there's a little bit of
Yeah.
rumors if he's going to get that move before our game or after. That's a little bit of a tangent, but I wouldn't bet on him not playing against us. I think even if they agree to a deal before our game, they will keep him for that game and then let him leave. But anyway, I digress. That's a tangent. I'm just saying don't bet on him not being there because he'll be there on Thursday. And you're gonna have to work around him because he is a class defender. The good news is that they don't have Medina next game because of the red card. But they have quality all over the pitch. And it's our job to exploit it, but also our job to cover up the stuff that we're going to point out that went wrong because there are stuff that went wrong. I just talked for a little bit. So
Yeah. No,
anything else?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean you hit on a point that I was thinking about as well. Is you could just tell that their quality level, you could just tell it's a little bit above where our team is at. Not that our team doesn't have talent, but there's kind of levels to it. Where one of their quote unquote, like cheaper players is like 3-4 million, and for us that's usually like a good quality signing player for us. So um, it just kind of shows what we're dealing with at the moment, and their quality on the pitch definitely showed. I mean, being down 10 men and still pulling out a 2-1 win, and it could have been more. It says it all, really.
Yeah. So I mean, I think without further ado, I brought some stuff with me that is not fun stuff, but we need to talk about it because there's some concerning things that happened last Thursday. Um, there was a couple big things that went wrong, and a lot of it was on defense. And we're gonna look at some stuff, but just to put into words first, the defensive transition is very poor. Not only on Thursday, but a lot of these games, and I think that's a cost. That's a result of the high press that Alonso is asking from his players, and it's not a secret because he said it from day one, and he's been repeating it over and over in whatever the 2 months that he's been here. So this high press that he wants, it's in theory, because this is what tactics are. There's theory and then there's in practice, right? So in theory, it's a very nice thing to hear, and especially when he first came in, like it was very exciting to hear it because some of the best teams in the world, and I'm not comparing us to the cities and the Reals, but some of the best teams in the world do play this, high attacking, high work rate, high press, vertical movement, very similar to what the stuff that Alonso is saying. They do play like that, and they execute it very well, and it's very effective. So that's why I'm talking. In theory, it's very nice. In practice, it's a different story because obviously, trying to implement that in a team like City or Real is one thing, and then trying to implement it at this level is a different thing. So not everything that is sounds good in theory is going to work in practice. And I think we're seeing exactly that we're getting some drawbacks of this style of play that he wants to implement. I'm going to let you say something, Adoni, before I show what I got.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that's a very good point. The high press, high intensity. If you remember back when Tareem was hired, that was one of the first things that he said as well, is that he loves to play high intensity football. He likes to play high scoring. And I think that quote was that we're gonna score more goals than we concede. That's how I play. But we quickly saw like what maybe 4 or 5 games into his tenure that he was like, oh no, that's not gonna work. So he started to switch things up. And you're gonna show those screenshots, but I think Alonso is gonna start to figure out that with what we've got, not only in Europe, like even in the Greek league as well, I don't think we really have the personnel to kind of execute this type of play like on a consistent weekly basis.
See, the thing is, and I agree with you. The thing is, it's like I said, it can work at City, it can work at Real, but can it work at a lower level? And what it comes down to is this is my, let's just call it like my philosophy of this sport. And I've had this idea for a while now, ever since I kind of started understanding, the intricacies of the sport better. I don't think I've ever articulated on the pod, but now is like a really good time to express it. This is how I view it. You have 100% of the teams that you might play in a season, or just 100% of teams in general. If you exclude the top 5% and the bottom 5% of those teams, and the top 5% are the cities, the Reals, the Liverpools, you name it, the ones you expect to be in the top 5%, and the bottom 5%, whoever you want to consider in there. And you take that middle 90%, once you've excluded the extremes, you take that middle 90%, which is where we fall, and which is where basically all the opponents that we play in a given season fall. The Lonses, the Marseilles last year, the Ajaxes, the Greek league opponents, even the lower Greek league opponents, all those teams, in my opinion, fall in this middle 90%. And my understanding is that any one of those teams can beat anyone on a given day. And what it comes down to, because in reality, usually the stronger team wins and the weaker team loses, the one on paper, what it comes down to is discipline, right? There's a lack of skill on one side, or a disparity of skill, I should say. But that to me is less costly in a game than lack of discipline. And what these games often come down to against two opponents in this middle 90% that I'm saying is who can stay disciplined for 90 minutes, or who can stay disciplined for longer in those 90 minutes. And usually the team that stays disciplined for longer, even if it's the weaker side on paper, is going to come out with something. And we actually saw that at the weekend with Levedaikos. We'll get into that later. But Levedaikos, Ajax, Lons, these are all examples that fall into this middle 90%. It comes down, in my opinion, mostly to discipline. Skill, technicality is also a factor, but mostly discipline. And I'm going to explain why, unless you have something to interject with.
No, go ahead. Show those screenshots.
Oh, boy. All right. So I rewatched the whole Lons game, and let me just get this up. And there was some key moments throughout the whole game that were pretty damning. And like we said, remember what I'm saying. I'm talking about discipline. I'm talking about this defensive transition, and I'm talking about the cost of the high work rate, high press that Alonso is asking. This is the first goal. This is their first, basically threatening chance. And I got this thing here too to help us out. So This is when the player here gets the ball. I believe this is Saeed, but it doesn't really matter who it is. He gets the ball here, and of course, he's going to run down the wing. Oh, I can't. Are you serious? Sorry.
No, is it not letting you mark it?
No, it's not letting me. Oh boy.
You see that little at the left of the screen, there's like a little squiggly line. I think once you click that, it'll allow you to start marking it.
No, I'm not trying to mark it. I'm just trying to scroll through them, but it's not working.
Oh, got it, got it.
I'll do it like that. Okay, that's better. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So he's got the ball here, and he's obviously going to run down the pitch. Look where Arau is. Arau is over here. He's behind where the ball is down here. Let me
Yeah.
get the marker back up. Okay. So Arau's here. He's behind. He needs to fall back now because this player is going to start running at Ingerson and Kotsiras, who's here. This is the next frame here. He's running. Arau's still behind, out of position because he's coming from over here. The player's running at him. Kotsiras has to backtrack. Ingerson has to cover this area. We have a numerical advantage here. This is what it ends up with. We have a numerical advantage here, 3v2. The fact that this player has so much space, despite us having a numerical advantage, is unacceptable. And it's because Arau is out of position. Kotsiras is doing what he's supposed to do. He has to cover the wing. Ingerson is doing what he has to do. He has to cover this space here. This is Arau's man to step on. But because he's coming out of position from the middle of the field, he's late to this. And ultimately, this is when the player releases the ball. He doesn't get there in time. Then we could talk about the problems that lead on the other side of the pitch with this empty space here where he's unmarked. That's a problem in itself. But this ball, he should never get put into this position because if we backtrack to here, he should be closed down at this moment because we have a 3-on-2 in our favor. I pulled up a couple screenshots a couple of weeks ago when we played with Ajax, and it was the same situation where we had a numerical advantage in a small area, 3v2, same thing, and it led to a threatening chance, and it also led to the Ajax goal and the 1-0 when they beat us at home. And now the same mistakes are repeated because we have a player out of position who's trying to make up a lot of ground and can't do so in time. Obviously, it leads to this. This is a problem. Mladenovic is here.
Yeah.
These two players here are doing nothing. They're marking no one. Mladenovic has to mark this person to be fair to him, but him marking this person leave this exposed.
Yep. And who's supposed to
So,
cover him at that point? It's Chedin, right?
Right. It's either Charon or Mladenovic, and there has to be a center back here. Where's Jedvaj? Ingerson is here. Jedvaj is this Jedvaj here? This is Jedvaj.
That looks like that's Jedvaj, yeah.
This is Jedvaj. Completely out of position. I want to point something out at the beginning of this. So this is the first one I showed you guys. Arau's coming from here, right? And he's already behind the ball, which puts him at a disadvantage going forward, which we saw he's late to the 3v2 over there. Where does he come from before this? Look at the time, 2:57. I'm going to show you what happens 4 seconds before. Arau is here. Arau is our second most advanced player on the pitch. There is no one more ahead of Arau than Fotis Ioannidis right here. Yep. The only other player who's close to him is Juricic here, who's basically in line with him. But for argument's sake, Arau is the second most advanced player in the pitch. This is the high press, high work rate that we're talking about. It's not by chance, it's not by mistake that Arau finds himself in that position. It's purposeful that he finds himself in that position. He finds himself in this position. He's pressing the ball carrier. The ball carrier sends the ball here, down here to the bottom right. And then once that happens, we see Arau drop here. Okay, he's doing what he's supposed to do. He knows he has to go back now because he knows he was playing basically as a cam, and he knows he has to cover defensively. But he's not there in time, and that's a result of that high press, the high press and the vertical movement that he's talking about. Could you argue that Arau shouldn't be here and it should have been one of the attacking players? You could argue that, sure. But this is not by accident that he's here. This is not by accident. But he still does what he's supposed to. You can't blame him. He does what he's supposed to, but ultimately it's not enough because the ball goes here and then the ball goes here. And he's behind. And he has to make up ground quicker than this guy takes up ground. And he can't do that. Can't do that.
Yeah. Now, my question is here, is it one of those things where like how do we kind of if Alonso wants to keep this going, how do we kind of rectify this? Do we play with it like a double pivot in the midfield and we have like somebody stay back, let's say like we sign Oliveira and then Arau is the one that pushes up so Oliveira can cover his guy?
So this is the dilemma that you have, because this could be very effective if done correctly. But like I was saying in the beginning, it comes down to discipline. Can the player who is out of position in an advanced position come back in time, first of all, and know where he's supposed to be second of all, right? It comes down to
Right.
discipline. And Arau is one of our better defenders. And I've always been high on Arau, and I think we all support Arau, but even he's
Yeah.
fallible, just like anybody else on the pitch.
Yes.
Can he do this, what is being asked of him? Let me pull something else
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit beyond his physical capabilities. He's not a fast player.
You would think that. I'm trying to find it. My bad. I'm
No,
getting
no
lost here
worries.
in the.
Just something to definitely think about. I mean, it's nice seeing these visuals.
Okay. This is the counter argument to answer your question. Around here at the 41st minute is our most advanced player. There's no one more forward than him on the pitch, bar maybe Juricic, who's all the way on the other side of the field, so forget about him. Your CDM is the most advanced player here. Okay? It's the same thing that we were talking about in the last example. What's going to happen? This moment here, if you look at the bottom of the screen, is where we lose possession. Tete had possession, he loses it. This guy has possession, and it's not done, so I don't know who it is. He gets possession. What does Arau do next? Oh shit, I gotta get back. I gotta get back. We've lost possession. I gotta cover this big empty space that's here. That's where I'm supposed to be. Guess
Yeah.
what? He does it perfectly. He's closed down all the space by this point. Just a couple seconds later, this is where the ball went. He's closed down the space, and this is where the play ends. They don't have a camera view because it zoomed in. He has gotten behind the ball 2 seconds after this one. So he can do it. The reason I'm showing you this, because we point out the good and we point out the bad. He can do it. He was at least partially responsible for the first goal because he was out of position due to this high work rate, high press. But same thing here. He was our most advanced player here. And he still is able, he immediately realizes where he needs to go. And he immediately goes back and is, in fact, the one who covers this space, which is exactly where he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to do, and gets behind the ball before they advance further than midfield. So, to answer your question, he can do this. Yes, he can do this. He's a quality player. I'm not bashing his quality. The question is, at this level, can these players do this over 90 minutes? Because even if you don't do it for one time, you're exposed even as early as the 4th minute, which we saw. That's the concern.
Yeah.
That's the concern.
Yeah, that's a
And I
valid concern.
I don't know if I have the answer to that. I mean, unfortunately, we see examples here where they can do it within 40 minutes, they can do it, and they can't do it, even one of your best players and one of your key defenders. It comes down to discipline, like I said at the beginning. It comes down to discipline because this people define discipline differently in this sport. Discipline is knowing where you have to go when you're out of position, identifying gaps, and getting back in time. It's not all that discipline is, but it's a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think yeah, it's to me I'm actually not a big fan of this, and I'm glad that you've kind of got these screenshots here to kind of show us because it looks like in this high press system, just from these screenshots here, it's like Arau is the key component to all of this. Because like you mentioned, Juricic is all the way on the left side where he's supposed to be. Fotti's where he's supposed to be. Everybody else is pretty much where they would naturally supposed to be and gravitate on the pitch. But like right there, as you show, Arau is like the highest one up there, and he's supposed to be that protector of the defensive line. He's supposed to sit in front of there. And then, of course, he did sprint back in time, but that's to me, that is asking a lot. And it's that's where it kind of arises for me to where like, do we kind of switch things up a little bit to where we have another like defensive minded midfielder to cover for him when he's up there. That's just kind of my, and then we have like a Decari, like let's say like Bacacetas behind Foti or Juricic we could just put. It just kind of makes me think about like the discipline piece, but also how can we kind of rectify some of these issues tactically as well, or like with a formation.
Yeah, you raise all good points. Unfortunately, this is what comes with this system. Eh, Simple as that. I mean, you're right. The the people who you're selecting to be where can change. Is Arao the right player to, be in this position? Stuff like that. Going back to the first
Right.
one,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
is he the right player to be here? Should it be someone like Baca? Should it be someone like Charon? Tete is also close here. That's a good question about,
Hmm.
who you're picking to be there.
Yeah.
It's not by chance that he's picking Arao, in my opinion. It's
Yeah.
not by chance. Maybe he trusts Arao the most. Maybe he feels like he could ask Arao to do something like this rather than someone like Baca or Charon. I could very much see that because I have my concerns about both Baca and Charon so far this season. Um, but yes, it's if you're gonna ask Arao to do this, he needs to what is being asked of him is that you need to make sure you can get back and cover the position where you need to be in time. He does it in the second example. In this example, of course, he doesn't. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
We gotta move on. This is concerning. But we got other stuff to talk about. Let's see what we got here. Okay, this is going forward. So you have here Gotidas with the ball. You could see this is not exactly when he releases the ball. He releases the ball a couple seconds after this, but you could see he's looking up for an outlet. And this ties into also Levedaikos at the weekend because we had a real problem creating chances, not creating chances, but going forward. And
Yeah.
what I was saying and what you were saying also, Adonia, is diversifying attacks. You can't blame Kotsiras here because how many options
No,
does he have? He has
there's
Tete
nothing
here
there.
down on the right. He has Tete here down on the right, which he doesn't really have him because this player's
He's gonna
covering
close him
that
down.
alley, and he has a long ball to Foti. I'm gonna ask you a question. Where do you think this ball ends up?
He probably, I mean, what I would do is probably have to play it back.
You either play it back or you force something that's unnatural. The ball ends up here. He hits it into this player because he in fact does try to play it to Foti. As I said, he has two options. He had Tete here, who was basically covered, and he had Foti long, which wasn't even a good option in itself. And ultimately, this player covers Kotsiras, and it deflects here, and it goes out. Either it's controlled by this guy or it goes out. I can't remember. But you can't really blame Kotsiras here because he is looking up, and you have this
Right.
whole red circle of empty space, not one white shirt in this area where that's where he's looking to pass it. That's where he wants to play the ball. That's his outlet. But he doesn't have any of that. He has Tete here, or like you said, he has Baca. I think that's Baca above him
Yeah.
to play it back, and then you just go horizontal, or you go even more back to Ingeson. And this is this
Yeah.
this was part of the problem with Levedaikos on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's no outlet.
All right, here we go. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 white shirts in this small circle defending how many yellow shirts? One, two,
Or
three, four. 7 white shirts defending 4 yellow shirts. There's a couple of guys, of course, because if it's 7v4, obviously we're smart people. There's a couple of guys here who are doing absolutely nothing, who are just eating up space. One of them is this guy right here, Kotsiras, because look at this here. Let me
yeah.
ask you a question, Adoni. Where does the ball go here?
Yeah, it's gonna end up on the open space right there where the man's pointing like this.
Of course, it ends up with, I don't remember which one, but it ends up with one of these two guys somewhere in the box. He carries the ball a little
Yeah.
more. Again, I'm sorry, this is mostly off of memory, but I promise you, it ends up with these
Yeah.
two guys because they continue their run into the box and they end up right around here. I hope you can see my cursor. They end
Yeah.
up right
Yeah.
around here, and they this ended with a shot on goal. A shot on goal. I think Dragowski made a save from this. regardless if Dragowski made a save or not from it, Kotsiras is defending air here because this guy is covered by Ingeson. Arau's also coming back. Jedvaj's got this guy. Mladenovic's got the ball carrier. And you got the two trailing runners who eventually are going to catch up. At least
Yeah.
Kotsiras, if not one or two more guys here, are just a waste of space here. And then you got all of this here. Tete, of course, is doing what he can tracking back. But ultimately, he's just as fast as these guys, so he doesn't catch up.
Yeah.
And they have a clear run into the box, and then you have two exposed men at the far post because of this cluster over here. Let's keep moving.
Yeah.
Now we get into Kotsiras getting completely exposed because this one and the next one I believe is pretty damning. Kotsiras here is similarly to the last one, eating up space for no reason. Not only is he in an odd position to start with just in this frame, he is actively running away from the wing player. Actively running away from the wing player. Where is he going? You have Ingeson and Jedvaj. Yes, they have a 3v3, I guess you could call it here. Arau's coming back. He has to trail, but he doesn't have to commit as much as he's committing here. Because guess where the ball goes here too?
To the wide player, the wing.
To the wide player. He's overcommitting to something he doesn't need to overcommit because you leave this exposed here, then this guy has all this space to exploit because just overcommitting here. That's not as bad as the goal, but we'll get to the goal.
I have a question for that real quick before you switch it.
Yeah.
Do you think Kotsiras is trying to cover it because you see Arau is so far behind his man technically with the ball? You think Kotsiras was trying to cover for that mistake?
I think that's a fair point. It's overcompensating basically. He's identifying that again. Like I said, this is not numerically great for us going back because you have 3 here and you have 3 here. It's basically a 3-on-3 without including Kotsiras. So he's trying to, like you're saying, make it a 4-on-3 in our favor. I don't think this is the most damning. I think you raise a valid point that he is trying to cover this evenness, which could eventually favor them once they get closer to the box. I don't think he has to commit so much.
Yes.
If anything, maybe make a more direct run to the ball carrier rather than just eat up space where he's headed here. Because if he goes here, it's not gonna be very impactful, right?
Right.
Going more directly, like what you're saying, Arau should be stepping on this guy. If you're trying to do what Arau's supposed to be doing, then you step on the guy. Yes, you still leave this guy exposed, but there's no point in covering space at the top of the box. Ingeson is heading there. Jedvaj is heading there. Mladenovic eventually gets there. Yes, it's another body here. I get what you're saying, but if the question is he trying to cover for Arau's role? You make a more direct run towards the ball carrier because everyone else is falling back too, right? Not everyone can just fall back. Someone, like if we go back to the first example, and I don't want to keep going back here because we got to move forward, but not everyone can just keep falling back. Someone has to step on the ball carrier. It's Arau's job here, and he's late because of what we discussed. But if that's going to be the same thing with Kotsiras, and he's trying to cover for Arau, step on the ball carrier rather than just go into this space where you're probably not going to be an impact at all. If you're going to leave this guy exposed. The ball ultimately goes here, unfortunately, because these guys are smart. These are quality players. They exploit weaknesses, and they could see this. They see that this player is running completely out of position. That means there will be something to exploit here.
Yeah, and Alex, to your point, for your first point that we talked about, this sequence looks like it's a counterattack off us losing the ball. And just from that screenshot alone, it looks like Arau again was all the way pressed up the pitch and he wasn't able to make it back in time. And it kind of caused this whole combustion here to where, like you said, Kotsiras should probably try to step on the ball carrier. And then I guess Arau is going to have to try to make up for it either by trying to go out to the wing or trying to cover this guy as well. So it was, this Arau thing is it's a very big deal, I think, because it leached into this issue here again. So that's a really good point.
This is the problem with the high press is that can you still hear me? My AirPods are doing something weird.
Yeah.
This is the problem with a high press is that you're often left out of position, especially on these counterattacks, like you pointed out. And what happens then is that, yes, you could easily say, well, just go back to your position. Like, where your position is. For example, Kotsiras, you're a right back. Go back to the right back position. But the problem is you get disoriented, right? Because players get comfortable with what they're comfortable with. That was a poor way of saying it, but they're comfortable with what's usual, right? And when something becomes unusual, unorthodox, you get disoriented and you kind of become lost, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
become as simple as just go back to where your original position is, because then you're in this kind of like no man's land, like you're confused. You're like, do I go on the ball carrier, like we're saying? Do I just cover empty space? Do I go back to my position? These are all things that are going in your mind in a very short amount of time where you don't have the ability to really weigh these things.
Yeah. 100%.
This is another attack. This is again before the red card still, so it's 11 on 11. They get the ball again, another counter attack, like you pointed out. It's a basically a 3-on-3, 4-on-3 if you want to include Aral. They're running. Mladenovic is out of position. This is how you know it's a counter attack. This is Mladenovic. He's out of position. Someone's got to cover here. This is Jedvaj. He's doing all right, but as you could tell, 1, 2, 3 players going that way. Aral going that way. We're on the back foot. What happens? Okay, we cover. They backtrack. We cover. The problem is the ball carrier's still given so much time on the ball, right? Someone
Hmm.
has to step. Someone has to step. And I know it's easy for me to say, and I know you're going to say, well, the guy who's supposed to step is Mladenovic, and he's not out of position. The problem is at this level, when you give players time on the ball, they get to weigh their options, right? And that's the
Yep.
worst thing to give a quality player, time to weigh his options, because then he finds the most threatening option available to him. If you give him less time on the ball and you close him down sooner, he doesn't have that time to weigh his options, and he either has to pick a worse option or make a rush pass and force an error, right?
Right.
So right
Yeah.
now, from here, look where he takes it. He takes it from midfield, and by here, he's already halfway to the box, and he ends up at the box basically. And over all this time, he's had an opportunity to weigh his options and pick what's best. And of course, he picks the
Right.
best option available to him, which is the player on the far post. The ball
Yeah.
goes here. He's got two good options. He's got this guy with his hand up here, and he's got the player at the far post. Ultimately, it goes to this player here who sends in a low cross. I believe he sends in a low cross. So ultimately, it gets to Dragowski, and it's a very threatening thing. But it all starts because A, it's on the counterattack, we're exposed, and there's a hole in the field. And B, you let him go all the way from midfield to the box, just like with the first goal. He starts in midfield, and where does he end up? Top of the box, right? And then, of
Yeah.
course, just like I said about the other example, he's had time to weigh this option. He's had time to weigh this option here. Yeah, you can
Yep.
complain that Mladenovic is out of position, but he's had a lot of time to see, oh, I got an exposed man at the far post. I'm gonna send it right there. This level is too good to be doing this stuff, giving players this much time on the ball. The reason I've circled Arau here is because Arau is defending no one here. Yes,
Yeah.
he's doing exactly what we're asking him. He is tracking back. He is behind this player. It's a 3-on-3 if you exclude him. It's a 4-on-3 if you exclude it. If you include him, he is doing what
Yeah.
he's supposed to. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the crucial moment,
Hmm.
he's defending no one. This guy is
Yeah.
marked by Jedvaj and marked by Ingeson. These
Yeah.
two guys are marked by no one. Yeah, maybe a little bit Kotsidas, but not even really. Kotsidas has no idea who's behind him. You could tell
Yeah.
that. Arau here is defending no one.
Yeah.
So this is also the
Yeah.
discipline. It's not, we said, get back into position. You've been asked to go up front, press up high, press like a striker, press like a cam. Fine. You still have to go back. He goes back now, but you have to go back meaningfully.
Yep.
You can't just go back and be a body. It's something, but it's not everything,
It
because he's
looks
doing
it looks
nothing.
to
He's doing
me.
nothing here.
Yeah, it looks to me that he should have stepped. I mean, hindsight, of course, but it looks like he should have stepped on the ball carrier at that time, because if he left his man, I think it was Jedvaj was gonna mark him anywhere. Ingeson, whoever it was, one of the center backs was gonna cover the guy, the quote unquote, the guy that he was running back with anyway, and he could have just stepped on the ball carrier.
Exactly. Anything is better than what he's doing here. And you could tell he's not tracking back meaningfully. He's just tracking
Yeah,
back for the sake of
for
tracking
the sake
back.
of it.
And there's only so much you could fault him, because like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, you get disoriented when you're so out of position and then asked to regain your position. You're so
Yeah,
disoriented. The best players can do it effectively. But when they're not the
yeah,
best players, you're put into this dilemma, this problem where you have a player who is when he is tracking back meaningfully or not. The goal now. This is insane. Okay, the ball carrier is here. He's taking the ball up. You could see this is Kotidas here. Ingesson is behind him. Kotidas is falling back. Okay.
Yeah.
From this moment right here, you could question: should he step or should he fall back? Let's say he steps and gets beat. What happens? Okay, then Ingesson is completely exposed, and Ingesson is getting 2v1 from these players because Kotidas is out of the picture. He backtracks. I think it's the correct move to backtrack. He should not step at this point in the field. The problem is he has his back turned to the player.
Yeah.
This is 1 second later. 33:04, 33:05. He is lost. He is completely lost. Not only does he have his back towards the player, he's backtracking, but he's not effectively backtracking. That's why I'm saying I can't blame him at this moment for backtracking. It's not technically the wrong move, but he's not meaningfully backtracking. He is just running backwards into space, and not just into space. He's running into another player. He's running into Ingesson here. He's running into Ingesson. He's in what they say in baseball, no man's land. I'm going to use a baseball analogy, which is probably going to go over a lot of people's head. But when you're an outfielder and you're obviously looking at the batter, they tell you never to turn your back on the fly ball when it's hit to you, because what happens when you turn your back is that you lose the ball, right? And again, it's a baseball; it's in the sky. It's not the same. I'm not saying Cortez is going to lose the ball, but you get disoriented, right? Disoriented. So that's the problem. He is backtracking. A, he's not meaningfully backtracking, and B, he's like a lost chicken basically here, because he can't recover. Once you turn your back on the player, you give the player a huge advantage.
It's a big no-no. Yeah, you never do that.
A huge advantage. I blame Ingesson here too a little bit. I'm going to tell you why. Because Ingesson sees everything that's happening. He has a vantage point here to here. I should have drawn lines, but he has a vantage point from the ball carrier and also to the wing player. Yeah. And in the moment, I was like, what is Ingesson doing? That's, you could blame Kotsidas for being like a lost chicken here, and it's a result of the high press and being out of position originally. But Ingesson has this vantage point, and he should tell him, dude, make a more meaningful run defense down the line where you're supposed to be. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is another example. After this is 33:06, this is 33:05, 33:06. He's running more into Ingesson. Unfortunately, I skipped something. Unfortunately,
now
it's at this point where Ingesson tells him to go. The damage has been done. The area here is left open. The player has it's too quality of a player to give him that much time on the ball, like we said about the previous examples, and it's too much space left open because you're already screwed. You're already screwed. Ingesson has reacted too late. He's identified the problem too late. Kotsidas has been in no man's land for the last 5 seconds. This is open. Yeah. This results in a goal. The player, the left back here, gets the ball. Said from here makes the run in. He first times it. Drago makes a good save. Unfortunately, it falls right back into his feet, and he puts the second chance away. I don't even care about that. This is the problem, because it shouldn't even get to the point where Said gets the ball in the box. This is the problem. And it's a problem with Kotsidas tracking back from being out of position in the first place, not knowing where he's supposed to be, not know where he's going, and Ingesson not correcting him given all that's happened prior to that.
Right, yeah.
This is inexcusable. Having your back turned to the player who is in the final third in this position is absolutely inexcusable.
Yeah. 100%.
This is another example of going forward. There's no one supporting the player here. Just like with the previous example that I showed, there's this big empty space where you need at least one player supporting. Ultimately, Kotsidas from the left side does the right thing. He makes an overlapping run, and that's where the ball goes. So I'm not saying there's no support, but like we're saying, and like we're going to say with Levedaikos, you need diversity of options and attack. And Baca here has one option, and it's only when Kotsidas makes this overlapping run underneath him and in front of him. It's good. Kotsiras does the right thing, but Baka does not have another option. He has no option other than to wait for Kotsiras, and then when that finally happens, that's the only place it's going. It's predictable, it's one-dimensional, and it costs you.
Right. Yeah.
No one here. This whole area, everyone's playing on the line. Foti, he wants the ball played low here. That's an option. I'm not saying that's not an option, but it's not a good option because it's not, you don't have a lot of space here. It looks like a lot of space, but Samba, the goalie, is going to come out and close down that space, or the ball is going to be hit too hard and it's going to go out. This is a very difficult thing to ask, even with Baka's quality and even with Foti's quality. It's an option, but it's not a good or realistic option, in my opinion. These guys up here, 1, 2, 3, are doing nothing. Arau, I guess, is a fallback option. But 1, 2, 3, Tete, Jurcic, this has to be Charon, is doing nothing. Baka ultimately has one option, and it's the overlapping run, and it's where the ball goes. But the bigger problem is lack of options, lack of diversity, empty space.
I have a quick question. Do you remember how this sequence ended? Did it end in a cross in the box?
I don't remember. I try remembering how everything ended, but this one specifically, I don't remember. It does go to Kotsiras here.
Okay.
Does he take it to? He probably takes it to the right side of the box, but I am not. I don't want to lie to you. I really don't remember how this one ends.
Okay. Yeah, I was just
Listen,
asking that
it
because
still might end with something good. It could still end with a cross. It could still end with an attempt on target. I'm not saying from this position it's impossible to end with a positive result.
right.
But you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're not giving the ball carrier more options. If you're leaving this space open where there should be another option, right? You're making it easy on the defense to defend this area where afterwards, I don't have the before and after on this one, but where the player makes the overlapping run. It's too easy and it's too simple and it's too one-dimensional, regardless of how it ends.
No,
Just like with the
100%.
Coteras
Yeah.
one before, right? Just like with the Coteras one before. This we already looked at. This is the Arau that he actually successfully does the backtracking and, in fact, is the one who stops an attacking play despite him being one of the most advanced players. So we don't need to cover it again. Oh, this is freaking out. Let's see what we have here. This is the flip side. So I picked one example from Lons because they're a super well disciplined team because I've been putting so much emphasis on the discipline. And the reason, maybe some people are not going to like this, but the reason that the game did not get affected at all by the red card, or at least did not get affected in our favor, is because they are a well-disciplined team. And this is an example why. They're playing with a man down here, and they've been playing with a man down here for 20 minutes. This is Donzo with Foti, right? Right here is Donzo with Foti. Ultimately, Donzo does a goof. He misses the ball, one of his very rare mistakes. And not only does he miss the ball, but he ends up on the ground. I'm going to show you the next picture in just a second. But he ultimately ends up on the ground, and Foti is through. Foti stays up, he's through. But what is this guy doing here? What is this guy doing here?
Yeah.
He's
He reads the
covering.
play.
He knows where he's going. He's reading the play. And even with the surety of Donzo, as good as a defender he is, he has a contingency. And he makes that run from here where he's already anticipating it. And he makes that run and he beats Foti to it. Without him, Foti's in. And keep in mind, this is a team that's playing down a man. Yet they are covering these holes. They're covering these holes because this is what discipline is. This is how I define discipline. Being able to identify gaps and being able to cover those gaps.
I think.
Do you know what makes it worse about this? And I'll let you say what you want to say. Do you know what makes it worse about this situation? Take a guess what position this player plays.
I want to say he's a left winger.
He's their striker, number 7.
Wow.
He's their striker.
Wow.
And he's ultimately the one covering for Donzo in the back. You don't believe me? He is number 7.
That's incredible.
Can you see it here? Not really, but you're gonna have to believe me on it. He's number 7, and you could look up on SofaScore or FontMob where he plays. He's their striker, and he's ultimately the one covering for the sure center back who ultimately makes a rare mistake. That's discipline. Identifying the gaps and covering them, no matter who you are on the pitch or where you're supposed to play. It's everyone's role to be able to cover this because you can't just say it's up to someone else. Imagine
Right.
Baca doing this, and I don't want to pick out Baca, but imagine Baca doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Just imagine, because I can't.
Yeah. No, I can't
All right,
either. It's
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Adoni, you were gonna say something.
No, no, not a problem. It's I definitely 100% agree. It's discipline, but from just seeing something like this as well, and just going back to the Kotira situation, to me, it also just shows me that the Lens players just have higher football IQ. I mean, like for example, it goes back to Kotira's. That's like defending 101. I remember you're never supposed to turn your back to the attacking player. That's defending 101. And you're always supposed to, like, from Ingeson's point of view, you direct him to the winger or their left back, whoever was making that cutting run on the left. That's just basic football knowledge 101. You're supposed to make these types of reads. So with their striker here, instinctually, of course, you feel it in the game too, but you also understand that, okay, if my man here is going to miss the header, that's going to leave Foti wide open. So let me make that run. Let me make that penetrating run back so that I can cut it off and just end it right there. Like, you just have to have a reading for the game too. You of course have to have that discipline, but you have to have football smarts too. And it seems like the curtains, not to put these guys down or anything, but it's just kind of like some of the mistakes that we made in this game. It was just very like boneheaded plays. It was just like mistakes that you learn when you're in kindergarten. You know what I mean? When you first start kicking a ball around, they teach you certain things of, keep your back, never turn your back to the defender, always cover your man, always communicate. And it's like, we don't have that. And I have the question that I was going to raise earlier as well, to where it's like, is this just some of it's just chemistry with these guys to where they're just not comfortable communicating these things with each other? They're still trying to feel out the system. You know what I mean? It's just certain things where I just, I'd like, this
I
is
don't
just raised
know.
like a million questions.
Listen, this is a great example because not only what you see on your screen here, but they also have a new coach. They also have a new coach and a young one at that. I think
Yeah,
he's
that's true.
30, 35 max. He's very young.
Yeah.
So a lot of the same things that you're saying about us could be said about them, but they're executing much better. Can you just chalk it up to discipline or high football IQ, like I'm saying and like you're saying? I really don't know. Is it chemistry? I don't know, but this is a prime example of why a team down a man can still play like it's 11 men. Because ultimately, what happens when you're down a man? Of course, you're down a man. That's the obvious, but there's a gap on the field ultimately
Yeah.
where that player is missing, and it's up to the other 10 players to make that gap not felt, whether
Right.
it's on attack or defense. Ultimately, that's their job. Can these other 10 players, whoever's closest, pick three players who might be closest to that given gap, can these 10 players and ultimately the ones who are closer make this gap not felt? And
Right.
that is what I call discipline, because this team successfully did that. They made a gap on the pitch where there was a player missing, wherever it was, not felt, because the other guys were picking up the slack.
Yeah.
There's a really interesting, I didn't include it here, but there was a really interesting moment when Medina, the player who got the red card, was coming off and he was upset. He threw his tape. He took it off his shin guards. He threw his tape, and then Donzo comes up and he hugs him and then he points at him. And I was like, okay, what is this? I didn't obviously
Yeah.
didn't know what they said, but it was a really interesting exchange. And the way I read it, and this is just my interpretation, was what they kind of say in American sports a lot is like, I'm gonna pick you up. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pick you up. You goofed, you fucked up, I'm gonna pick you up. That's how I read
Yep.
it. I could be wrong, but that's how I read it. And this is kind of supporting. Maybe I'm looking to confirm my opinion, but this is kind of supporting that. I know it's not Donzo specifically, but that's just kind of the mentality that you have to have when you're put into this position. Hey, you goofed, we're gonna pick you up. We're gonna cover these gaps. We know our job. We're gonna execute it. And that's what this is. The striker here is the most retreated player covering for their best defender. Okay, this is killing me here. This is killing me here because this is kind of
Yeah.
like a bigger topic that we could talk about now. We could talk about in general, but Baca recently has been very off in all of these recent games. Maybe not in Botif, but Ajax and after that. And one big thing that I've noticed over and over again that's been getting on my nerves is all he does is look to shoot. And let me just preface
Hmm.
this by saying that we were so excited when he came in because he brought that exact thing to the table. His gun of a foot, his long shots, something we were very afraid to do, especially in the Jova era. We would never take chances outside the box. Then Baca comes in, and we're like, yes, now we have a long shot guy who could add that
Yeah.
to our game and make us a little more complete. Unfortunately, recently, maybe it's just been exposed recently, but I'm just going to talk about recently because I don't remember the details of what happened in the spring. Recently, that's all he's been doing. Let me tell you
Yeah.
what he does here. He shoots. That's
Mm,
him shooting into a wall. This guy's right here,
terrible.
into a wall, and into a player who's closing in on him here. Okay, you're gonna. If anyone goes to rewatch this, you're gonna tell me, well, it doesn't even hit this player. The ball goes
The bar.
over the crossbar. So you're going to say it doesn't even hit the wall that's in front of him. That's not the point. This is such poor decision making. You have a
Yeah,
wall in front of
terrible.
you, plus another player who's closing you down on your strong foot, which you're taking a shot of. Yet you still are choosing to do that when this is his first touch on the ball. Look where Jurcic is.
Juricic is in
Well,
prime
well,
position.
well onside. Well onside. The problem is Baca doesn't even think about passing the ball here. He
No.
doesn't even
Look at
see
his
Jurcic.
head.
I could promise you he doesn't even see Jurcic.
No, he
I
doesn't.
could
Look at he's
promise
looking
you.
down. He's
He's
looking at his
looking
foot.
down. He's
Yeah, he's looking
looking
at the
down
ball.
because the only thing he's thinking about is how am I going to control this ball? How am I going to put it on my left foot? And how am I going to put this upper 90? But guess what? Again, I don't have the video, but he doesn't control the ball well. I just have the before and after, but the control is not good. It bounces up. His first touch is not good, and ultimately puts him in a bad position to shoot. The problem is he never even considered another option. He did not
No.
consider this. He didn't even consider Tete behind him. I'm not saying he should have passed it to Tete, but the problem is he's not considering another option. In his mind, he's got shoot, 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 and it costs him to miss this fantastic position that Church is in because this is a
Yeah.
very simple pass where my line is. It's a very simple
Yep.
pass, and you're going to tell me, hey, you're just looking at it from the TV, and you're looking at it in hindsight, and you know it ends poorly. What if you put it upper 90? Hey, you're right. It is hindsight bias. I'm not saying it's not, but this option has to be considered because George is doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing here, being in this position, staying on side. There's a gap between the defenders, but there's never a scenario where Baca even looks at this. And
No, he
this should be
doesn't.
clear as day for a player of his quality. And this is my argument to, hey, you're just looking at it on the TV. To a player of his quality, you got to be able to see this. You got to be able to see
Yeah.
this. This is I don't know. Inexcusable is the only thing I got to say. And
Terrible.
you're just thinking shoot 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 here. You can't convince me
And
differently.
look
Of
at
course,
Jury. He would have been open.
he made
He
the
would have been
run. Of
through.
course, now
Yeah.
he's offside. Don't
Yeah, of
let's not
course.
focus on the
Yeah.
fact. But here he's well onside, and the only thing he's going to do is continue his run because he wants
Yeah.
this ball through the defenders into this lethal spot. This is lethal. This is lethal.
Baca, Jury would have been through one-on-one because in that angle where he's shooting, I mean, look, he would have had the ball by then and he would have been through to goal. Much better option.
Donzo
Because
covered,
look at
but you
him.
can't. This is the before and after. If the ball is just a dink pass through here, he gets
Yep.
it basically around where the arrow ends. Where the arrow ends,
Yep.
that's where he gets it. And like you said, he's one-on-one on the keeper. And at worst, he gets a shot off. At worst,
Right.
at best, you're looking at I don't know what this is. This would be 2-1. 2-1 in the first half.
Yeah.
I think. No, this is the second half. This is the second half.
Was it the second half?
Yeah, this is the second half. But regardless, it doesn't matter. This is inexcusable because you cannot convince me that Baca is even considering something else other than shoot, which is ultimately what he does,
Yeah.
and it goes over the bar. Let's keep going. We're almost at the end here. This is another example of what is Mladenovic supposed to do here? What is Mladenovic supposed to do here? He has one option. He has one option, and that's Jurcic here.
Yep.
Diversity of options, diversity of attack, supporting runs, supporting players coming in. There's no support here. 1, 2, 3, 4 players on the opposite side of the pitch.
Yeah. Where's Charon
What
at?
is he
He's on the
supposed to
opposite
do?
side, right?
Charon is this player, I think.
Is that him?
One of
Or
these
is it him?
Baca. Oh, this might be Charon. Yeah,
That might be
right.
Charon
This
right
might be
there.
Charon.
Yeah.
This might be Charon.
So
Yeah,
it's
you're right.
I don't understand why he had him. I mean, maybe again it's that high press thing, but This is why it looks like, yeah, we don't have anything going forward through our midfield because like you said, he doesn't have any options. It's
What is
just
he
you
supposed
play
to
it out
do?
to the wing.
There's
Yeah,
one
exactly. He
place
just
he
has
could
to run
play,
up.
and it's Juricic, and that's where the ball goes ultimately. And regardless of what happens after that, again, I don't remember what happens at the end of this play either. But regardless of what happens at the end of that, you're not you're not doing yourself any favors. This player is already closing down Juricic because why? He sees this is the only pass. Look at
This is the
where this
only
guy's
option.
taking steps. This guy's already taking steps to Juricic.
Yeah.
You're making it easy for them. Where's Mladenovic supposed to go? I don't even blame him. He gets
Yeah,
talked
I
so
can't
much
blame
about
him.
cross, cross, cross. If you have one, two, three, four attacking players on the opposite side of the pitch and only one option here, you either cross or you're going to play it close here, who's already getting
Yeah.
closed down by this player.
Alex, we have no midfield in this picture. It's sad. Arau, that's it. But you're not going to play that ball to Arau from there.
Two
Terrible.
more. Two more. Again, what is Mladenovic supposed to do here?
Yeah. It's
Other than
just
cross. One, two, three, four, five. Five players in this little circle. And not only five players in this little circle, look at these two guys. These two guys right here, they're on top of each other. They're on top of each other. That is a waste of space. Just like we said about the
yeah.
defense before, with Kotsiras running into Ingeson, that is a waste.
Yeah.
Two players on top of each other is a complete waste on attack and on defense. This is
Look
a
at that
waste.
open space. You see that open
Mladenovic has
pocket on the left?
yeah.
Nobody's there. Yeah, nobody's there. Foti
No
could have
one's
gone there. Nobody's there.
Pelistri here is asking for the ball here. What do you mean asking for the ball here? This is not an easy pass from Mladenovic to make between these two
Yeah.
players accurately. You don't even have that much space. And you're asking for the ball there. Okay, I don't remember which side Pelistri was playing on, but like you said, someone's got to be here.
There's a
Someone's got
whole
to be
pocket
running
of
into here.
space.
Whether it's Pelistri, whether it's Foti, whether it's Yeremia, if it's the 90th minute, so he's on. Sporar is also on, I think. No one's here. No one's here. Mladenovic has no options. He either is beating this man and then taking the space for himself, or he's making space for him right here, himself here, and then crossing it in. Ultimately, he crosses it
Yeah.
in. I
Yeah.
could promise you. And I don't
Yeah.
blame him because he has
No, I
no
don't.
other options. This is the last one, and this is where I do blame Mladenovic, because here he's beaten his man. Here he's beaten
Yeah.
his man. And hold on, let me just say one more thing about the previous one. Some people are going to turn and say, well, listen, this is how the end of the games go. It's fill the box, it's cross. That's how modern football is played. And that is a very typical way for the end of the game to go, especially when you're chasing the score. That is correct. It's not diversity of options, like we've been saying over and over again. You want to fill the box, sure. But like you pointed out, Adoni, at least one player has to give him another option. You could still fill the box with all these players. You could still keep your big man in Yeremiev there. You could still keep your big man Sporar there. Whoever else is on Foti. Someone, whoever it is, needs to have the wherewithal to make this run so he has another option. So it's not just we know this guy's going to cross and we just have to defend. And like I said, these two players on top of each other are useless. Are useless. Five players here in
Yeah.
close proximity are basically useless. And these two specifically in close proximity are even more useless. If you take one of these
Yeah.
and you put him here making a run, it gives Mladenovic options. It frees up this
Yeah.
cluster of players, and it at least makes the defense have to defend more angles rather than, all right, we're just going to fill the box here. And all right, this is the last one. Like I said, this is where I do blame him, unlike the previous one, because he has beaten the player here. Obviously, you could see the player is absolutely gone. He's he's
Yeah.
he's elsewhere.
He's
Mladenovic has
touching
beaten him, but
grass.
instead of taking this space and putting himself in a more threatening position, and I'm not saying specifically shoot, but put yourself in a more threatening position, he doesn't do that, and he gets to about right where my cursor is now, and he just
Mm.
crosses. And that's where Mladenovic and Baca are the same for me. And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is they're very one-dimensional players because even when they're put in a position or a situation where there are other options or better options, they only think of one thing. And Mladenovic is cross and Baca is shoot. And in that
Yeah.
sense, they're so similar players, very one-dimensional, and they can't adapt. A good player here, despite of what he's used to, adapts. He sees the space and he takes advantage of it, and he gets into a more threatening position and either takes a shot himself or puts in a low cross and in. The point is that you take advantage of this, and he doesn't
Yeah.
do that. I can give him a pass here because all his options are here, but once he's beat his man here, he has to be able to adapt and look at different options. Okay, I'm sorry that was very long, but as you could tell, all of these things got me so heated because this is ultimately what costs you in the game. It's decision making, but it's also what we're talking about is Alonso's thing going to work? Can it work?
Mm.
We got a little more sidetracked with the later examples, but the early examples are exactly that. Can it
Yeah.
work backtracking with a player up here that needs to fall back?
Uh,
You're going to be
mm,
exposed.
it's yeah, it to me personally, it doesn't look like that's something that we can with this squad, with this roster. I don't think we can effectively do something like that consistently. I mean, if we do, that's where I do think that we're gonna have to sacrifice kind of our shape in the midfield a little bit, or fiddle with it and just have a double pivot of like, whoever we have here as a defensive midfielder next to Arao. If Arao's going to be our guy to have that press going forward and back, having that work rate, and then maybe just moving Baca again behind, or Juricic behind Foti as that Decari there. But I don't know, man. It's just that picture of Mladenovic there was really damning though, because it just shows there's no midfield. Like it's legit. It's like we're just playing like a 4-1-5 or something like that. Like it was just Arao and everybody else was on the line like that, but it's just not effective.
And that's exactly, and we could kind of meld this together. That's exactly what happened with Levedaikos because when we got put up against the wall, we were, and I don't have any screenshots from Levedaikos, don't worry. But again, I could definitely pull some up after this, and I remember distinctly there was a line of players on the defensive line of Levedaikos. There was 4, 5, 6 players on that line, and there was no midfield. And it's up to the ball carrier, who's often Arao when he's back there and trying to connect with the attack. He has nothing in the midfield, and it's up to him to somehow get it there. And what does it result in? Just crossing, crossing, crossing. This is something that we talked about with Yova and Tarim, and now it's with Alonso too. When we get put up against a wall, especially late in the game, in a game that we should be winning and need to get points in, it becomes very one dimensional. Cross, cross, cross. Because we're doing this, we're lining the back line with players, and there's no one in the midfield. There's no diversity of attack. There's no creativity. There's nothing. Listen, you go into panic mode. I get it. Teams do that. We could commend Levedaikos all we want for how well drilled they are, how well they kept their shape, how disciplined they are. The reality is, like I said, way back when now, the way I view it, there's these middle 90% of teams, and anybody can beat anybody or anybody can get a result if it's two teams in that 90%, and Panathinaikos falls in that 90%, and Levadia falls in that 90%. And if Levadia keeps their discipline, they can get a result. But you still got to be able to find a way around it. And that, when you're struggling to attack late in the game, you got to diversify your attacks. You can't just line the top of the box with 6 players on their defensive line. And keep in mind, that was happening not even in the 90th minute where you might expect that to happen. That was happening in the 70th minute when you still have
Yeah.
20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes left to go. And there was no midfield. Like you were saying, it was a 3-1-6.
Yeah.
3-1-6. How are you supposed to connect that?
Terrible.
You're going to play it wide to Mladenovic, and you're going to play it wide to Kotsiras or Vayanidis, whoever it was, and they're just going to cross it in, and you're just going to hope. But
Yeah.
that's not going to get you anywhere unless you get lucky. And like we did, we ultimately got lucky in the 97th minute, and Tete got ahead to one of those crosses, and he got it on target. The goalie had to make a save, and then it fell to Sporar. All that happened, but you're going to bet on that because it didn't happen for 97 minutes,
Right.
and it
100%.
still was from a rebound. So
Yeah.
if that's what you want to bet on, then go for it. But that's not effective.
Yeah,
And this is a newly promoted team. No matter how well drilled they are, this is a newly promoted team. And we saw this happen
yeah,
last year with Lamia when they held it to
yeah,
draws because they were well drilled, well disciplined. It happened now with Levedaikos, but you gotta find ways around it. We said it with Tareem. Hey, you gotta adapt. The
yeah.
team is sitting like this. They're playing low block. They're keeping their shape. Okay, what are you doing to get around it? You're playing a 3-1-6 and you're lining six players on the top of the box. I don't think so.
No, yeah, it's you you know this, Alex. Games are won and lost and controlled through the midfield. That's like football again 101. And everything comes through the midfield. You connect your defensive end to your offensive end through the midfield. We just bypass the midfield. We just our defender, our fullback, and of course that's the modern game, right? Your fullbacks go and they bring the ball up, but then you just cross it in the box. You cross. It's so easy to know, and especially in a league like the Greek league, a lot of these lower tier teams they play those low blocks. They know how to defend. They know how to grind out a draw. They know how to grind out a win. So they're just gonna expect every single time they're gonna expect these crosses into the box, and it is all up to that diversifying of attacks. Okay, maybe on one play or one possession, Baka's gonna do one of his long shots. Okay. On the next play, let Pelistri do something with the ball. I saw that he could dribble the ball very well. He's a very technically gifted player. Okay. Let Foti plays back to the defense, go into the box, try to create something, bounce the ball off of each other. But it's just the same thing every single time. And we've seen it with three coaches now. Cross in the
It
box and pray.
it comes down to positioning, like I showed you in the screenshots from Lons, but also it happened in Levadiakos. These players are running away from the ball carrier. They're running away from the ball carrier. Not one player, other than a few examples, is supporting him. Yes, you have the
Yeah.
overlapping run like with Kotsiras, but that's just one option. You have all these guys running away from the ball carrier, running to the box like there's something to get there.
Yeah.
There's nothing to get there if you don't facilitate the ball getting there first. And that's where the midfield comes in. Even these midfield guys, Baca, Charon, they just are running to the box, like I showed you in some of
Yeah.
these.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in other situations, when they're not running to the box, I don't have any evidence of this, but I could promise you it happened. When they're not running to the box, they're pretty stagnant. And I'm talking specifically about Baca and Charon. They're
Yes.
pretty stagnant. Two players who were extremely influential in the second half of the season last year. Baca came in and he hit the ground running. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here
Hmm.
and pretend like we've been hating on Baca for 6 months since he came. That's not the
No.
case. He was a very good player when he came, and he was an impact immediately, and we were singing high
Yeah.
praise. Charon too. Charon, when Tareem came, he really came into himself, and he was a key part of that midfield.
Yeah. At the
But
Euros,
now
he was great.
in this Alonso system, I'm not saying Arau. Arau is moving. He's been exposed, like I said, so he's not above blame and he's not infallible either, but he is moving. But I continuously see Baca and Charon, and trust me, they are standing behind players when we have the ball.
Hmm.
They're not making their stuff available. And when they're moving, it's moving away from the ball carrier towards the box. Rarely is it towards the ball carrier. Rarely. I'm not going to say
Disastrous.
never because they do. They're not idiots. They're not idiots, but rarely are they moving toward the ball carrier. It's either standing behind a player while we have the ball and not making themselves available or running toward the box. And it leaves your attack predictable, stagnant, and ultimately plays fall down because where are you supposed to go? How much can you ask from one player carrying the ball like a Rao who's connecting the defense and the attack? How much can you ask from him?
Yeah.
He needs help. He needs options. He needs support. And ultimately, what it comes down to in most of these plays is play it wide, cross it in.
Yep. It I just going back to what you were talking about as well. Like Baca came in, hit the ground running. We were like to your point, we were super excited. I was ecstatic about Bacacetas. If I'm being honest, I was more hyped up about Bacacetas than I was with Pelistri coming in. I mean, I was super happy. Um, and Cherin as well. Cherin was. I watched him at the Euros for Slovenia. I was watching Slovenia, and I mean, he was just running. He was getting his plays in. And to your point, it's like from what I saw yesterday, it's like he's not making those mobile runs, those creative runs that you need in the midfield. He came back once, I remember, and he picked up the ball. I think it was from Mladenovic, or it might have been from Jedvaj. Picked up the ball, turned around, and got a nice little sequence going. And then he tried it a second time and almost, I think he did lose the ball, and we almost got scored on. And then after that, was just it. It was just like, I don't know.
There was a moment in the Levedaikos game where it was Mladenovic was in. Mladenovic came off the bench, right? So it was late in the game.
Yeah.
We were still chasing the goal. If I had to guess, it was probably around the 75th, 80th minute. And Mladenovic had the ball, kind of where you'd expect him to have the ball, on the left side around the middle of the field. And we were sending players up. And Charon was next to him for some reason. I don't remember what had transpired before that, but Charon was next to him. Like you said, he might have been tracking back. We might even be talking about the same play, but let me just say how I remember it. And Mladenovic was waving Charon forward. I'm not kidding. Like, again, you're gonna have to trust me on this because I don't have the
Yeah.
picture evidence. But Mladenovic, of all people, was waving Charon forward because Charon was standing right next to him. We were looking up. Mladenovic was ready to carry the ball up, and Charon was just waiting next to him around the middle of the field. No urgency to go forward. Again, fact check me. It happened somewhere around. Again, Mladenovic was on, so it's late in the game because he didn't start. Somewhere after the 70th minute, I saw that and I was like, Mladenovic of all people is waving Charon forward. That tells you a lot right there. That tells you a lot.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to speculate or anything too, but it's just kind of like I wonder if it has to do with that whole negotiation over the summer with who was it? Dinamo Zagreb. I wonder if he had wanted to leave, and you know, the fact that we kept rejecting those offers, as they said, maybe he's just kind of not happy up on Panathinaikos.
I think the bigger problem is these players are getting exposed in this system. Players like Charon, players like
Mm,
Baca, who were good in the spring, and we were all very happy with their performances. And let's just talk about Baca and Charon specifically. Like I mentioned before, I'm not pretending like we were hating on Charon and Baca the whole time. Just
right.
3, 4 months ago, they were very influential players for us. What has changed now? What has changed now? And it's a system because the
Yeah.
players didn't magically get bad, especially not Charon,
No.
who is younger and on the up. Baca too, he's not old. He's only 31, so I'm not gonna just assume he's on the decline or that
Right.
significantly. But what has changed to make these players who were so influential just 3, 4 months ago completely absent now? And it's a system because even Sturge alluded to it at some point. Like he said in the chat just yesterday, I think it was, that these players in general, not picking anyone out, but these players really benefited from a more static system that was something like Yova's. And I was like,
Yep.
yes. Why? Because what Alonso is asking requires ample movement, and he wasn't coy about it. He said it from day one: high press, high work rate, vertical movement. He said all these things, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. And like we said earlier in the pod, this is what's required of these players. And the players who are not either A, willing to give this movement that's required or be able to are getting exposed. And that's the Bacas and that's the Charons. They are not as mobile as Alonso needs them to be.
Yep.
Can they be in the future? Well, that's the question. Can they be? If they can't, they're gonna get sat on the bench pretty fucking quick. Sorry that I'm
Yeah.
cursing a lot, I guess, but I'm pretty heated,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's why they're getting exposed now, because the system is exposing them, and the system under Tareem didn't expose them, and the system under Yova didn't expose them either because it was a more static system. But the second you make it a more mobile and more mobile requiring system, these guys, Baca and Charon, get exposed. And I
Yeah.
guess this might be a good segue. It's not by chance that Alonso's looking to add another starting attacking option. And
Yeah.
this is I'm hypothesizing now, but it's because he cannot stand Baca, because Baca does not give him what he needs, and he's looking for another attacking option. Obviously, Vargas has been heavily rumored, and we're trying still. It's kind of died down recently, but we're trying to get him. And what happens if you get Vargas? Vargas is a winger who also plays cam, and you already have Polistri and Tete who are starting caliber. And I could almost certainly tell you Vargas, Palistri, and Tete, none of those guys are going to be sitting on the bench.
No.
And what's going to happen? Baca's the one going to be replaced. So either Vargas is going to come in and slot into that cam role, Palistri is going to be on the left, and Tete is going to be on the right. Or alternatively, he plays Tete at cam, he plays Palistri on the right, which is his main side, and he plays Vargas on the left, which is also his main side. But the fact that Alonso is looking at another attacking reinforcement of starting caliber means he doesn't like something in the attack. And it's not Foti, and it's not Tete because he brought him in, and it's not Palistri because he brought him in. The one that he didn't bring in, and it's the one that's getting extremely exposed game after game, and that's Baca.
Yeah. Well, and to that point too, I vividly remember when Alonso was first hired, I read a report that he was not a fan of Baca, that Baca does not fit his system. And
There you
I
go.
thought, okay, maybe this is fake news, but no, we're seeing it in life, actually watching the games, that he doesn't fit in the system. And Alonso clearly is aware of it. So yeah, I mean,
Yep.
and I love Bacacetas, but the thing is, he's not thriving in the system. He's more of a detriment, if anything.
Good players do not thrive in every system. That's the reality. And they
Yeah.
get exposed when the system changes and it doesn't fit them. That's the reality. No one here is sitting saying that Baca's a bad player. And that's exactly why I
No.
made the point. We didn't hate on Baca 3 months ago.
No. I wanted to
I'm
get a
I'm only
jersey of
hating him
his.
I'm only hating him on him now because he's getting exposed. So what has changed between 3 months ago when he was very influential and now? And it's a system and he's getting exposed. And that's why Alonso's still looking for starting caliber attacking options. And like you said, early on that rumor came out and we were like, whoa, what's that about? Like Baca's a good player. He's one of our best players. What's
Yeah.
that all about? Listen, the way I see it right now, Alonso's playing Baca solely because of necessity. Because
Yeah.
before Palistri came in and before Tete came in, we were short on wingers. One of our cams, who's an alternative option to Baca, is Juricic, who is playing at the left wing.
Yeah.
So, for argument's sake, and in reality, not just argument's sake, there was no alternative option for a lot of these games prior to now at the cam position. It was Baca or nothing because of
Right.
Juricic playing on the left. Now, this is very interesting. This game on Thursday is the first time, technically the second time because Polistri was available last Thursday, but it's technically the first time that Alonso has two cam options, Baca and Juricic, because now Juricic is freed up from the wing. Now he can go back
Yeah.
to cam because
Yeah.
we have Polistri, we have Mancini, we have Tete, we have well,
Yeah. We have yeah, it's just Tete, I guess, on the
but
left.
that's still the point. You have three wing options now: Tete, Polistri, and Mancini. Two are going to start. You don't have that. I know. I just hit a wall myself, but you don't have that big of a problem on the wing. Juricic still a wing option, but starting the
Yeah.
game, he's not technically a wing option. He is
Right.
by trade a cam. I know he's
Yep.
really thrived on the wing in some of these games, but Alonso has a decision now. For the first time, basically, he has two cams rather than just one. Is he going to choose Juricic over Baca? And I honestly think he will. I honestly think he will.
Yes. I think the same. I personally, though Jurcic came in against Levedaikos yesterday, and I mean, he was already tearing it up. I mean, that to me, that just shows we need to drop Baca for the game on. It's on Thursday, right, against Lens.
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, I'm dropping him. I think it's the
Yeah.
logical choice, and
Yeah.
I don't think me or you or anybody's going to be surprised to see that. Really.
Listen, I'm not going to be super upset if Baca's in that starting 10 role in that cam position. I'm not going to be super upset, but I think this repeated lack of everything that we've talked about from Baca makes it very easy for Alonso to pick Juricic to start at that cam role.
Yeah.
Baca,
Yeah.
no, sorry, Juricic at cam. I would say Palistra at left, Tete on the right, and Foti up top. But Baca is making it very easy for Alonso to bench him. And like I said, and like you said, there was that rumor originally. And like I said, he's, I think, only been playing him as much as he's been playing him so far due to necessity. And now it's the
Necessity.
first time where he's actually gonna have another option. So let's see what he does. Let's see what he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
What else we got? Where do we want to go next? We could continue with. Do you want to say anything more about Levedaikos? We kind of already covered
I
that.
Yeah, I think we beat that horse. Maybe I mean this kind of can segue into the topic that has been kind of arising. We saw Leoforos talk about it on his YouTube channel. We've been seeing it all over Twitter. With all of this said, with this dissecting of the tactics and everything, what do we think about Alonso? The question arises, if we lose on Thursday, do we start to think about sacking him and replacing him with somebody else? Do we think about holding on to him until November, December time? That's kind of the thought process that's been kind of going on. And I can kind of give my 2 cents while you collect your thoughts a little bit. I was going to write a blog on it. I think just for Panathinaikos continuity's sake, I think we should just stick with Alonso until probably November time. If these issues are just like not being rectified whatsoever, and we're just seeing, just terrible performances, nothing being fixed, scrap it, scrap them. Um, there's just so many rotating factors, right? There was this comment that I posted on my Instagram earlier today from this guy who talked about as well. Alonso came in late in June because of the Saudi situation. He got players a little bit later. And that's not a 100% excuse for Alonso, but it's kind of like these games have been serving almost like his preseason as his kind of way to get these players together. And it's like he fully doesn't have all the players at his disposal to fit this system. Now, I guess somebody can argue that, like, maybe that's when you change the system to fit your players. Um, but then I feel like if you switch your system again, I think our best style of play is that rigid style we saw with Yova and Tareem. So it's kind of like you just go back to the basics again and you fired them for no reason. So I think if we want to see some change, you got to have some patience. I can see the frustrations. I mean, we saw it together on those images there, but that's just kind of my 2 cents. What are you thinking about?
Adoni, you said a lot of good things, and I agree with everything that you said. There needs to be stability. The worst thing right now is another manager carousel, and the flip side, is the devil's advocate is nip it in the bud before it gets worse.
Right.
Well, this is now, like you alluded to, this is now where Alonso shows his worth. You're allowed to make mistakes. All the coaches made mistakes. Yova, Tareem, Alonso. Now you have to rectify. You have to show me. You have to show me that you learned something from last Thursday, because I learned something from last Thursday. And listen, I'm by no means saying I'm as smart as Alonso or I'm a tactical genius like Alonso, but that's to my point. I'm not a tactical genius, and I could pinpoint a lot of things that went south. So you have to show me now on Thursday that you identified problems. It doesn't have to be the problems I identified, but there are problems, and I think the problems I identified are massive problems. But that's beside the point. You have to show me that you identified problems, both with players and in the general tactics, and you have to rectify it. And this is where coaches show their worth, and that's why you have to give him a chance to prove that to you. Now, if he doesn't get the job done on Thursday, that's kind of a question you already asked. Where do we go from there? You don't lose faith in Alonso, because Thursday is a tall ask still, right? It's not simple. I think it can be done, and it should be done if he identifies the problems correctly. And the players, it's also up to the players to execute, because a lot of the problems that we're talking about are the players not executing what is being told of them. But if he doesn't get it done on Thursday, you don't jump ship. You don't jump ship because, again, this carousel is not something you need right now. How much time do you give him? That's a good question. I think you said at some point you give him until November or something, and then we reassess. I don't know when the cutoff is, or it depends also what happens in this time frame that we're talking about. But you definitely don't jump ship on Thursday. It's gonna really suck if we don't get the job done Thursday. So much hangs on this game and our continuation in Europe. I cannot stress it enough. So it's gonna really hurt. And it is, at the end of the day, it is a gigantic failure if we don't get it done. Where I have to put blame on Alonso is he knew this was the goal from day one. When he came in June, whenever it was, June 15, June 20, I don't remember, he knew this was the goal. Get the team into Europe. And if he doesn't do that, he's slipped on a primary goal, maybe the biggest goal of the season. I don't know what the goals are spelled out to him, but this is one of two top goals, let's just say. Get the team into Europe, get through the qualifying rounds. And he knew this from June, and you could say, the transfers came late, and is that his fault? Other people are making shots on the transfers, like Papadzim and Zavelas and Alafuso, all these guys. So how much is it really Alonso's fault that these transfers came late? Sure, we can make excuses. The objective was so when he came in. And he said, these are his words, not mine, in that first presser, the team will be tactically ready by the first qualifying match, which was Botev, of course. And the final picture will be at the end of the transfer window, i.e., the squad at full strength will be at the end of the transfer window. That to me says, hey, I'm going to get this job done even with the players I have today on June 20th.
Yeah.
He was talking specifically only about the first qualifying round. So I don't want to put words into his mouth. But he knew the objective on, let's say, June 20th. And he said himself, by the first qualifying round, the team will focus on being tactically ready. Okay, you got past Botev being tactically ready. Where has being tactically ready got you since then? I'm not going to blame you for Ajax. You did basically everything you could, and it went down to luck. But tactically ready was not what I saw on Thursday. You got completely exposed tactically, and you had player reinforcements. You had Tete, you had Polistri only for a little bit. Okay, you still have Baca, who you might not like, but you have a center back in Ingesson who you brought in. So the team was supposed to be tactically ready at that point, and also you have some, if not a lot, of reinforcements.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not jumping ship if Thursday goes south, but you've botched a primary goal if you do not get this team into Europe on Thursday, and you have to take some of the blame. And I also don't want to hear about the tough draws. I really don't, because at the end of the day, go read my recent blog if you haven't. It's very long. I apologize, but I talk about this kind of stuff. The reason we're in these type of draws is because of the European hiatus we had between whenever it was 2017 and 2022. 2018 and 2023, whenever it was, that 5-year period. You become an unseeded team, and these are the draws you possibly get. Listen, I'm not saying you're unseeded. The seeded side has very good teams and some worse teams. Of course, you have Chelsea's, you have Lens's on the seeded side of Conference League, and you also have worse teams. I'm not saying everyone is at the caliber of Lens and Chelsea on the seeded side, but as an unseeded team, this is what's open to draw any of these seeded teams. Unfortunately, sometimes you draw Lens, sometimes you draw Ajax. Is it bad luck that you draw the harder teams rather than the easy teams? Yes, but as an unseeded team, this is what you face. You leave the door open to draw these teams. Now you have to climb out of this hole. You have to raise the coefficient, and you have to become a seeded team once again, so you avoid even the chance of drawing the Lenses, of drawing the Chelseas in Conference League qualifying, the lowest level of European football. But that will only happen if you get this team into Europe and raise the coefficient. And that was the goal on June 20 when he came in, and he has to get it done. And there can't be any crying of, we drew Lens, we drew Lens, we drew Lens. You're an unseeded team. You could have drawn anyone from Chelsea to farmers from Bosnia. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's the reality when you're unseeded. So there's no crying about tough opponent. It's unfortunate, I agree, but you're unseeded at the end of the day. So did I answer your question? I'm not jumping ship on Thursday if he doesn't get us in, but he has failed in a big way in a primary objective.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And especially with those comments that he said yesterday after the game, which I wasn't a fan of, honestly. That with games like against Levedaikos, they just kind of had Lons in mind. But it's like, in my opinion, with Lons in mind, why are we still seeing, a lot of those same issues? In my opinion, I would have seen something better if Lons was truly on your guys' mind. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
the previous lawn should have been on your mind, not the future lawns.
Yeah, because it's like
Yeah,
that just seemed like a cop out. So it's like I don't want to see, like, if we lose on Thursday too, I don't want to see a cop out excuse either. It's you've got to take you gotta take responsibility for whatever's gonna happen.
that's what I'm saying. I don't want to hear excuses about the quality of opponent, which to be fair, he hasn't said anything. But again, this was the objective when you came in, and you yourself said by the first qualifying game, the team will be tactically ready. The final picture will be at the end of the transfer window.
Yeah.
That to me says I can get it done, even with the players I have right now. You give me a couple more players, I'm
Yeah.
going to get it done. And I'm not, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but regardless, this was the objective from day one, get the team into Europe.
Into Europe. Yep. Yeah. It's and of course, it could have been lip service, like Tareem, same thing, came in, made that we're gonna score more than we get. But it's like when you say stuff, you've got to back it up. You can't just say it and not, you can't have any
And he
uh, you
did.
know,
And he
yeah,
did with Botev. He did. Okay, you're going to turn to me and say weaker opponent, but he got the job done.
he got it
6-1 on
done.
aggregate against a weak opponent. Okay, you got the job done. Ajax.
Yep.
Hey, I can't fault him much for Ajax. Like,
I
yes,
tip my hat.
lo- losing 1-0 at home is not great, but given that you lost 1-0 at home, you knew what you had to do away, and you did it. You did it. You executed, and it was. Listen, Ajax had chances. They could have gotten a result from that game, but you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You had to go to Amsterdam and you had to get a win, and you did it. And unfortunately, it came down to, I don't like saying penalties are a coin toss, but there is luck
Yeah.
involved. There is also skill involved. There's also, statistic reading and all that involved. But
Yes.
anyway, it came down to
Comes down.
as
Yeah.
much of a coin toss as it can be in a game of football. I can't blame you on that.
Yeah.
Now, like I'm backtracking now. Now what you did on Thursday, last Thursday, did not work. Your players, your pitch, your formation was left completely exposed. You have to
Yeah.
now show me that you took something from that game and you have to reverse it. Not just the score, but the stuff that actually happened on the pitch. You have to show me that you learned something and that you have an alternate solution, because I don't think the high press is going to work against Lons. I think if he
No
goes
way.
with the same game plan that he did last Thursday, we're gonna eat a couple. It's gonna end 2-3-0. And I let me be clear. I'm not being pessimistic, but I
No, no.
saw what happened from that game, and the same thing is gonna happen if you just go into that game with the same game plan. The same thing is gonna happen, and we could have lost that first game by multiple goals.
We Alex, we almost copped four on yesterday against a much weaker opponent. So you're not being pessimistic at all. Like it's just being realistic. I mean, they were a Champions League level team at one point. So it's like would we it wouldn't be far-fetched to cop 3-4, but
Listen, good teams are going to
yeah,
exploit these holes. They're going to exploit these
yes,
holes, and they're going to make you pay much quicker than a lower side is. But even the lower side is going to make you pay. We saw it with Asteras. We saw it with
yeah,
Levedaikos. Even the lower sides are
yeah.
going to make you pay. But the good teams like Lons and the teams you're going to have to play in Europe if you get in are going to make you pay very quickly if they
Oh
see these
yeah.
holes. These players are too smart, they're too skilled, and you give them too much time on the ball, they're going to exploit these spaces like we saw in the screenshots and like we saw over the whole 90 minutes. Um, and the bigger question is, does Alonso need to change his tactics altogether? Are these tactics just not good for the Greek league? My answer is they're good. I think they could be very effective. I think they could be very
Yeah.
effective. It seems like it needs more time, though. It seems like
Yes.
it needs more time. And that's why I'm willing to give him time. But in the meantime, I don't think you could just go down with these tactics. You can't go down with these tactics if the players aren't ready and able to execute them to the extent you need to execute them. And that's going to
Yeah.
cost you. And you have no room for error now. You have no room
No.
for error on Thursday. So my
No.
my recommendation, again, I don't call the shots. I don't think I'm as smart as Alonso, but my recommendation is scrap what you're comfortable with. Alonso's clearly comfortable with this type of style of play that he's been very open about. On Thursday, as uncomfortable as it would be for him because he's clearly used to something as players are
Yeah.
on the pitch. On Thursday, scrap what you're comfortable with and go with something else. Go with the safer option. You still need to attack, of course. You're gonna play devil's advocate and be like, hold on, you're chasing a goal, so aren't Alonso's tactics actually good? That's a good point. I think that's a good point. But you went there on Thursday and the attack didn't do anything, this attacking high work rate thing. It only left you exposed behind and the
Yeah.
opponent is too quality and made you pay. So even if it's an attacking minded style that he's comfortable with and it makes sense for a game that you're chasing, I would still change the style, go with something else. What that is, I don't know. That's why he makes the money. Go with something else. I'm not necessarily saying safer, but something that is less of a risk that's going to leave you so exposed as it did Thursday, time after time after time. You still
Yeah.
have to attack. You still have to attack. I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and Alex, let's just be honest. If we run the same thing we did last week, the fame cambia pedara. Like we
No,
have to like
no.
I agree with you 100%. We have to switch something up even if it is against his comfort zone. But that's just life in general too. Sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone to make something work. It's clearly not working in this sense in this very moment. Because on the overall scheme of things, I agree with you. That's why I keep saying it's going to take time with him for his style to be implemented and for the team to get used to it. But in such a crucial game on Thursday, it's okay to switch it up and play a more pragmatic style of football, especially a style where our players are a little more used to with the last two coaches that we've had. Play a little more pragmatic.
Yep.
Sit back a little bit and kill them on the counter. We've got the fast wingers. We've got the tools to do something like that. Because if we just, if we go full on attack and Kotsiras is looking at the moon again, I mean, that's, you're looking at 1-2 goals just on his side alone. So
Two things.
something does
Two
need to
things.
change.
Two things
Yeah.
specifically with personnel, other than the general tactics. Coaches cannot start this game. Absolutely not. Why? I'm not trying to say he's the worst player in the world just because I've pinpointed these inexcusable mistakes he made. This is much more. And then hold on. Now I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because we're calling for Alonso to change up the tactics and the style. If he does that, I think Cotides can play. But if he stays with the same style, Cotides cannot play. Why?
No.
Because Vayanidis is much more suited for the style that Alonso wants. Vayanidis is much more
Mm-hmm.
vertically inclined than. Did I say the right thing? Vayanidis is much more vertically
Bayanese.
inclined than Cotides is. Even though Vayanidis on paper is a worse defender, what Alonso is asking in his typical play style is more of this movement that we saw Cotidas cannot excel in because he's running into wrong spaces and running into players and completely lost. Vayanidis, I said it from the first game, 2-1 against Bota. Vayanidis excelled. And I from that moment, he was still linked to Brazil at that time. From that moment, I knew Alonso would want to hold on to him because he did exactly what, at least verbally, we had heard Alonso call for, and he executed perfectly over. I think he played 89 minutes that game.
Yeah.
Coaches cannot start if Alonso keeps the same tactics. If he changes it up, I'm open to seeing Coaches in the lineup.
Yeah.
But another reason Coaches I think can start regardless of what tactics Alonso chooses to go with is Lance has already identified Coaches as a major weak point. If you throw him in
Mm-hmm.
there from the beginning, they are just going to exploit him. To what extent they do that effectively is going to depend on how good Cotidas is on that day. But if I'm sitting here and exposing Cotidas very easily and just rewatching the game one time, these guys rewatch the film time after time to prepare for the next game. They
Yeah.
are seeing how exposed Cotidas was in that first game. And if they see Cotidas in the starting lineup in that second game, no matter what Alonso's tactics are, they are going to exploit Cotidas again because that's what they're preparing for. They're identifying the weak spot, and they're right now, not right now because it's like 4 a.m. there, but as these days pass, they are talking about how are we going to continue to exploit what we exploited Thursday to such effect. I don't want to see Cotidas in because of that reason. I don't want to see Mladenovic in for a similar reason because he also got exploited on the right side. Sorry, on the left side. And the other one that I pointed out is Baca. I would strongly urge to see Juricic instead of Baca at that 10. Those are the three
Yeah.
positions where I would change. Other than that, of course, Dragowski stays. Ingus and Jedvaj is good for me in the center back. I think for the most part, they were very solid. Again, most of the defensive problems came from Arau not being able to track, Kotsidas being a complete lost chicken, and Mladenovic being what Mladenovic is.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the center backs. Arau must play even though he's gotten exposed. But that's why we're talking about the change of tactics, because if you're gonna want Arau to do what you want him to do, it might not be able to happen so quickly because what Alonso wants is kind of like muscle memory in a way, right? Because it's not
Yeah.
something that these players are used to, especially at this level. So you want these players to track back. You want them to regain their positions after being in such a advanced attacking position, defensive players. This takes time because you have to drill this into them, right? They have to
Yeah.
get used to it, just like muscle memory, just like you're, playing video games and you just hit the trigger just because it's in your mind. This
Yeah.
takes time. So I'm not saying bench Arau because he got exposed, but if you want him to do what you want him to do, I don't know if it's going to happen within a week from last week to this Thursday.
Yes. Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of Lucescu. Every year, Lucescu's team, Lucescu's PAO, I feel like they always start off slow. They always start off slow, and it may be to that effect as well, to where some of the new additions that they're getting in, some of the players that they're shuffling around, maybe for Lucescu's system, it takes a little bit for them to get used to it and to play that style of football. Same with Arau. We know what Arau can do. We've seen what he can do. He slots in everywhere. He's kind of like the new Zeka. I mean, I remember years ago, Zeka was that guy that was everywhere. But again, I mean, he's being asked a lot. I mean, those images just really opened my eyes. I mean, he's up and down, and I can't really fault him, for missing
Right.
back on some of his guys. But it's like Alonso, to fully, I think, to squeeze out the most from Arau, we're probably gonna need to stray away from what we've been seeing the past month or so that he's been in charge as a coach. Just sometimes that's what you have to do. You can't just stubbornly stick to one style. If you're a Pep Guardiola at a Barcelona or a Ancelotti, yes, so of course you have those players. But sometimes I feel like a good manager also has to adapt to what he's kind of playing and get the best out of his team, because what the style that he likes might fit right into the glove of what Lance likes to play against. So it's like, and we
Exactly.
kind of saw that. So it's like, that's when we have to kind of adjust. I mean, if you're a boxer, I love boxing. I'm constantly falling for the jab, getting socked in the face. I'm not just going to keep doing it because I like it. I'm going to switch up my tactic a little bit, even if I'm not comfortable. That's just how it is. That's sports. That's tactics. That's strategy. So I'm hoping that he changes it up, because again, I mean, tá fame caminha pedara if we don't get our act right on Thursday.
And again, just to repeat, like we're saying, like in theory, I really like what Alonso wants to do with this tactic,
Me too.
but in theory, is different than in practice, right? And
Yeah.
these tactics, like you've pressed on a lot, Adoni, might take some time. In the meantime,
Yeah.
you have to do something else because you have no room for error. You have no room for error on Thursday. You have to be perfect. And the one play where Arau is your most advanced player and then needs to backtrack and is not there in time because
Well, hold on. Can you hear me?
I could. Yeah.
My AirPods just died, so we got to wrap it. The one time on Thursday that he gets caught out because he's so advanced and he needs to go back, you're gonna eat a goal, tafas, and then what happens when you eat a goal? You're gonna need two. And I'm not saying we can't score two. I'm not saying we can't, but you're making your job more difficult. There's
right.
no room for error. There's no room for error over 90 minutes, and there's no room for error in specific areas of the game. You need to be perfect.
Yes, I 100% agree with you there, Alex.
All right, so what else do we got to talk about? We could just briefly cover the rumors a little bit because obviously we've gone on for very, very long here, and I apologize for that. But of course, since last week, Palestrina has been signed, which we obviously saw on Thursday. Um, you know, the Australian boys covered it really well last week, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But at that point, it hadn't been confirmed. It got confirmed. He flew straight from England to France to make the squad. Last minute, they put him in the squad, which is again really well done on the management because it was really tight on time. You know, he got announced Wednesday and he was in the squad by Wednesday. So, and that was basically the last opportunity. Um, and, you know, he came off the bench and he featured for 30 minutes in that game. And I think we saw his quality already. And then he started at the weekend. Of course, he wasn't on the score sheet, but you could just tell the kind of energy that he brings uh, to the team, that he brings to the pitch. He's a lively player and he's a threat. And we knew this with him coming in because coming from Man United, young, he's handpicked Alonso. Alonso gave him his first caps on the national team. There's a reason he wanted him in, and there's a reason that he wanted him for this, you know, this wing position where we've kind of been thin up until now. So I think Palestri's speaking for himself already, despite not finding the score sheet. He almost in the first game that he featured, he almost was a pivotal part in the penalty that ended up being a no penalty. So, you
Yeah.
know, even from those first 30 minutes, you saw his quality. So anything to add on Palistri?
No, I just echo what you said. I mean, I saw him playing yesterday, and I'm just like, this guy. I mean, he's not going to stay in Greece for long. I mean, he's a level above, and he's 22 years old. I mean, this guy's a star.
Yeah, and just on that point, I think it's important to say because they didn't mention it last week on the pod. They didn't have this information at that point, but you know, the contract details came out and
Oh yeah,
it's a doozy. It's a doozy because you know, he's signed through 2028, so it's a 4-year contract. But the caveats are it was a 6 million upfront transfer fee. There's a 45% sell-on clause, which allegedly expires in 27, and
yeah,
also expiring in 27 is a buyback clause, which is not good. That's not great because obviously at any point, the original owner, Man United, can turn around and say, you know, I'm going to buy him back.
yeah,
So it's in a way, it's a glorified loan. Those are, I
yeah,
think, Lucky's words that he said at one point in the past week. And I have to agree, it is in some ways a glorified loan, but listen, you still got your player. He's ready to contribute. He contributed literally within 24 hours of getting announced by the team. He was ready to contribute both in the short term and he's ready to contribute this season. He's not going anywhere this season, so he's ready to contribute this season. He's an asset to us this season, and that's a big plus. So, yes, the details of the transfer are not fantastic, but you know, a lot of people have pointed out, listen, you're dealing with a European giant, and the last thing the European giant wants is to lose, not only lose money, but lose an asset. And
yeah,
they're gonna cover their bases. They're gonna cover their bases. So, you know, I'm not sure how mad we can be about the details of the transfer. It is a little unfortunate, but we also don't know what's gonna happen. You know, if it comes to the point where it's a buyback, hey, all right, then let's talk
yeah,
about it then. Right now, he's an asset contributing and ready to contribute for the you know near future, at least one season. And let's
yeah,
appreciate it because Alonso brought this guy in, handpicked.
yeah,
And by the way, let me also say, we don't know the details of that buyback clause, but I can guarantee you it's not less than what we paid. The team, us,
yeah.
is not going to lose money on this. So the buyback should
Right.
be at minimum equal to the transfer fee that was paid to bring him in, which was 6 million. So
Yeah,
I don't see a situation where we lose money on this player because really the management is foolish and it's really basic that you can't have a buyback that's less than what you paid for him because if the
yeah,
team buying him back, they're only seeing more potential rather than less than what you at the time of the purchase. So Anyway, I hope I was clear on that point. The buyback is not going to be a situation where we lose money. At the minimum, it's going to be a break even. I would assume that the buyback is actually more than what we paid for him right now, but these are all assumptions. Anyway, let's keep going. I'm just going to list a bunch of rumors since we've gone on so long. The team is still in search for a winger, which we've mentioned. Vargas is on that short list. The team is in search for a striker still, especially in the scenario where Sporar gets sold. He's been linked all summer with Slovan Bratislava, and the team is still in search for a number 8. And out of all those 3 positions, where are the biggest needs? We mentioned Vargas. Balde from Lyon is someone who's been heavily linked. He is a striker option. It's important to note that Lyon has financial fair play issues, so they do need to offload players in order to meet whatever money they need to meet. I don't know the intricacies of that, but long story short, they need to sell players for this financial fair play thing. So they're going to try to offload players. And that's, we're looking at one of their players, one of their strikers. And does that result in an easier transfer for us? Does that result in a lower transfer fee because of their need to do this? We'll see. But Balde is one that a lot of people have liked it. I don't know much about him, but people seem to like him, especially as a backup option. So
Yeah.
that's something to look forward to. And then the rest of the guys who I'm going to list are Pepe from Gremio, Evander from MLS, I think Portland Timbers, and Oliveira from Galatasaray. Those are all 8 options. So it's nice to see that Alonso has multiple options for this one position that he wants to cover. I don't think it's going to be more than one of them. Maybe it is, maybe I'm wrong, but in my opinion, the way I see it, he's kind of narrowed it down to these 3 options if the rumors are to be believed, and he's trying to see which one makes the most sense, both monetarily and in the system, which we've talked so much about. So Pepe, Evander, Oliveira, 3 options for the number 8 role. What are your thoughts, Donny?
Yeah, I mean, out of the 3, I mean, I mentioned it in the chat today as well. Oliveira, I've been a fan of for years since he was at PAO. I watched him when he was at Porto as well. I haven't seen him at Galatasaray, but I'm a big fan of his. The only problem is, again, going back to how we play, he's not a very fast player. So if he's asked to be, pressing, I mean, realistically, we're going to be getting caught out left and right. So that's something to be seen. Somebody who I'm actually pretty interested in as well is that Pepe guy from I think from Gremio. Um, he is 26 years old, Brazilian. He's won a couple titles in Brazil. It looks like I think 2 cups and a league title or something like that. Um, I think perfectly fits the mold of what we would be looking for in a number 8. Um, and then the Vander guy, I mean, he's a quick, athletic player. That's something that does fit into our mold for sure. Um, I mean, we can't go wrong with any of these choices, really. I'd say probably in that pecking order. I guess Oliveira would probably be on the short end of the list just by his pace. But skill wise, I mean, he's good, and all of these players are great options, really.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. The nice things about Pepe and Evander are they're both 26, unlike Oliveira, who is 32. So,
Yeah.
Based on a lot of the things we've said today so far, I think, again, age is not a death sentence, but you would be led to believe that perhaps the 26-year-olds are more suited for what's being called upon, like we've mentioned with Arau and all these other midfielders, Baca and Charon. So I would lean a little bit towards the 26-year-olds. Again, full disclosure, I don't know much about these players. I do know Oliveira, like you mentioned too. He's a name that's gone around, but this Vander looks pretty interesting. I mean, I'm not saying market values are the most important things, but he out of these 3 players is the most expensive one. He's valued at 8 million, while the other guys are 3 million and Oliveira 2.5 million. So that comes also that's in conjecture with the age. Obviously, a younger player is going to be more expensive, but he does seem to be a pretty influential player for for Portland Timbers, this is pretty crazy. He has 24 goal contributions in 21 MLS appearances in 2024. That's
Wow.
that's pretty crazy. 12 goals, 12 assists, 21 appearances.
And he's
He's
valued at 6 million only?
8 million.
Oh, 8 million. Okay.
He was as high as 9 million 2 years ago, and he was at Midtjylland at that point, where actually um Ingesson came from. So
Yeah.
he has, he's familiar with Europe. I don't know to what extent he played and featured at Midtjylland, but you know, he was at Midtjylland at that age. Um, you know, Also, one nice thing about Evander is that he's Brazilian, and Alonso does seem to favor the South Americans quite a bit. Like he brought in
Yeah.
Tete, who's Brazilian. He brought in Pelistri, who's obviously his compatriot, Uruguayan. He's looking at
Yeah.
Brazilians like Pepe, another Brazilian, Evander, another Brazilian. Oliveira is Portuguese, so that's more European style of football. But it does seem like Alonso is very interested in the South Americans, perhaps because it fits his style. So
Well, to that point too, he also was a coach in MLS as well. So that's maybe where he saw him. I think he coached
in
Inter
Miami,
Miami.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he's probably maybe he's seen him there, and there's that kind of connection as well.
That's a great point. Yeah. So if I had to have a pick of these three midfielders, unfortunately, it would be the one that costs the most,
Yeah.
which, at 8 million, if we have to pay that kind of fee, you're looking at him for starting caliber at that point. You're not looking him
Yeah.
for by the bench. And I would think that he would replace Charon
Yeah.
if Alonso gets all his if Alonso gets all the players he wants, and I'm specifically looking at Vargas, who's been heavily rumored, and I'm looking at Evander, who's the one that excites me the most about these midfield options. Who are you replacing? You're replacing Baca, like we said, because that's one of the players who's getting exposed in the midfield, and you're replacing Charon because that's the other player who's getting exposed in the midfield. And then at that point, you have a midfield of Arau, Evander, and the cam who could either be Vargas or Tete. And by the way, if it's Tete, it's a midfield trio of three Brazilians. So none of this is by chance. None of this is by chance. Alonso, I am confident, is seeing these things. He's still looking for reinforcements. I like the options that are being put on the table. Unfortunately, that is not going to factor in on Thursday, which we already talked about. And we talked about what
Yes.
to happen. But in terms of these rumors, these are the rumors. The Vargas one has died down a little bit. Oliveira came out like literally today. We heard about him. Pepe yesterday, Balde the day before that. We'll see how this goes. The other one that came out, there's no more incoming rumors unless I'm making a mistake. The other one that's actually an outgoing was Arau has been linked to Vasco da Gama in Brazil, obviously his home country. Listen, as much as we've called out Arau in this episode, he's a class player. I consider him one of our best players. He was a huge part of our team last year. He was, in my opinion, one of our top three players throughout the whole season. It was Foti, it was Bernard, and it was Arau for me over the entire season. I'm not trying to bash Arau. I think he's still one of our best players, and I think he's the best cam in Greece. So I'm not trying to take him for granted. And that's exactly why I'm going to say this. If Vasco da Gama or anybody else wants him, I would expect the club to ask for an overpay because he is a
Yeah.
crucial part to this team. Even if he is getting caught out, like we pointed out, he's still a crucial part to this team. It's not just him that's getting caught out. That's more on the system, like we pointed out. It's up to the players and the coach to drill them to get up to speed with the system. So I'm not saying that Arau is a bad player, and that's why I would expect a gross overpay if it was for him to leave. Again, Vasco da Gama is rumored. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for me personally, Arau's one of the untouchables on the team. I wouldn't even want to sell him. Because again, to your point, what you said is it's not more so he's getting exposed, it's just the system isn't really doing him any favors. Realistically, he's an auxiliary player. If we're down a center back, we've seen that he can partner up with Yedvay just fine. He's like you said, I think he's the best defensive midfielder in Greece. We could just plug and play him everywhere. I mean, he's high energy, he's a workhorse. And for whatever they're going to give us, Vasco da Gama, it's going to be hard to replace him, especially, I mean, the window's going to close, what, in a couple days. So it's like, I think on the 31st. So you're not going to have enough time to replace a player like him. For me, untouchable.
In Greece, just to point out, I believe the window actually closed on September 15th. We have that
Oh, okay.
weird longer window, but I don't know how it works with making transfers to other countries who have already closed the window. Like,
Oh, got it.
I think actually maybe Nick mentioned this on Ellis Footy a couple weeks ago. The Greek transfer window closed on the 15th, but again, that how that's affected with other transfer windows that close on the 31st, like is tradition, I don't know. But you're right. Any outgoings at this point that are part of the main squad, which is kind of what we've been saying a lot about Foti, are going to be impossible to replace in this small amount of time. That's why Foti is very obviously not moving this transfer window.
Yeah.
No matter how much Sporting keeps trying, and no matter how many lies they conjure up, because they are conjuring up lies about Free Foti and that his agent has said that he wants to leave and stuff like that. The team cannot afford to sell Foti at this point in the transfer window because you do not have an adequate replacement, either in-house or you don't have enough time to replace him in the market. The same thing with Arau. Even if you were interested in selling him, how are you going to replace him at this point? It's too late. And he is
Yeah.
your starting six. So it's completely out of the question. Um, yeah. And yeah, I think that's basically it. I guess we talked a little bit about Foti. There are rumors that he is going to sign a new contract. Uh, they reinforced, I think it was in the pregame press conference before Lons, or maybe it was Sunday before Levedaikos, that he's not going anywhere despite, like I said, this continuous pressure from Sporting. He isn't going anywhere, not this transfer window. I'm almost positive about that. Um, and if he doesn't go anywhere, it's going to go to a contract renewal because he's going to, get paid like he needs to get paid. And ultimately someone's going to come calling next summer, whether it's Sporting or someone else. So you got to just keep the player happy, which he is, but you got to continue to keep him happy and keep him under team control so that when it comes time, the team does get paid. So
Yeah.
yeah, the Foti contract is most likely right around the corner. Maybe it's after the transfer window ends. We'll see, but it's probably very close.
Yes.
And that's it. I mean, the other thing for the people that are in Greece, obviously the team announced that the general admission tickets are 10 euros. The goal is to fill up the stadium, back the team,
Yeah.
back the players, back the coach, and then they just have to do their job. But it starts with the fans, right? Like none of this, I'm not going, I'm not going, I'm not going. I don't want to, see the team lose. You don't know what's going to happen. And the team is
Yeah.
definitely going to lose if there's no fans. We only are in it with a shout if we fill out this stadium. 60,000 people or more, capacity somewhere around, like I think 60 to 70. We have to fill the stadium. Obviously, we're unable to go. We're both in the US, but we would be there if we had the option. We'd be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Everyone who can go, of course, if you can't go, you can't go. But if you can go and it's within your power, they made the cheap tickets. They're even paying for transportation outside of
They're
Athens.
driving people. Yeah.
Even paying for transportation outside of Athens. They made an announcement, 10 euro tickets. I will take you from wherever you are to Oaxaca. They're like,
Yeah.
as little excuse as possible.
Όλοι στο γήπεδο.
Anyway, there are reports that we've already sold like 40,000 tickets, which is, if that's true, that is awesome. It's Monday today. Now, when we're recording, this is actually Tuesday morning in Greece, but we got 2 more days to sell 20,000 more tickets. They sold like 24,000 tickets in the first 24 hours after the Lons game, despite that loss. So there is support and we can sell this out. And it's, if you can, it's very important that we do get as many people as possible. I think that's basically it. The last thing I little bit touched upon it before is that there are 2 new blogs. One is mine. It's a longer blog. I apologize. It's long like this podcast, but it kind of had to be long because it was very technical. It talked about, like I alluded to, the importance of getting back into Europe, but also finishing higher up in the league this season, specifically first place, because you make your entry into Europe so much easier. The champion has the easiest path into Europe. and getting into the league stages of European competition is confirmed raising of coefficient points, which is the problem we're experiencing right now. Low team coefficient points puts you on the unseeded side of qualifying draws, which leads to at least the possibility of drawing teams like Lens and like Chelsea and like Ajax even before that. So only by getting back into the league stages, formerly known as group stages of European competition, will we be able to raise this coefficient? And that's why it's so important that we do everything in our power to win the league this season, or at least finish as high as possible. Like, for example, second place. And the other one is Sturge's blog, which he reiterated stuff we talked about in this pod. It's back the coach, you know, glass half full instead of glass half empty. Something that a lot of fans struggle with. It's so much pessimism, but there are a lot of good stuff. Alonso has done a lot of good in just the month that we started playing games. It was only 1 month ago that we had our first official game. So, and he's done a lot of good, right? So glass half full, I think, you know, we reiterated a lot. Back the coach. It needs time. He does need to change stuff for Thursday, but it's not all doom and gloom. Antoni, we're
You're
tired.
good, man. Yeah. Technical breakdown for you guys. You're not gonna get anything like it, Violin is just breaking down the game.
I'm sorry it was so long, but again, that stuff that I showed, I felt like was really important, and a lot of it was inexcusable. And why it's so important is that it's repeated issues that become patterns, and those patterns are concerning once they're patterns. So
Yes.
I'm sorry for the length. I hope you bared with us. Με την νίκη on Thursday. Όλοι στο γήπεδο. Antoni, thank you for being here. Comment, let us know your thoughts. Share the pod. Anything, support the team, support us. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate you listening. Thank you, and that's it.